Okay, up next is Jason Ritzke. I think I found the spot. Okay. Jason Ritzke is a nice guy who works for a company called Taos, helping people and companies get more out of their computers and themselves. He's specializing in orchestrating secure, effective, and meaningful deployments of open source software that help businesses and individuals achieve their goals and dreams. Please join me in welcoming Jason to ShellCon 2017.
I am mic'd up. I just always forget that people can't hear me. So pardon me if there's a little slowness in the slide advancement. I have an obnoxious window manager and Linux, which I love, but causes complications. Hi, my name is Jason. This talk isn't very long. We're in a short slot. And so we're only going to be talking about one thing, and that's public S3 buckets. Please, enough, okay? All right, greets. B2B made me do this. His was way too long, and it was at the end. It's supposed to be at the beginning. My name's Jason. I punch things and I do computers. Thanks, Datagram, for letting me get on stage last year and make more of a fool out of myself. Thanks to 562 for letting me learn more hacking, and thanks to Sol for goading me into giving a talk out of this after I had had just one bucket leak too many. All right, so what are we talking about today? Firstly, what keeps happening with these S3 buckets that companies keep ending up in the news? Maybe you know what S3 is, maybe you're super familiar, maybe you have no idea what S3 is and have no idea how there can be a server on a storage service. There can't. The articles are terrible. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about the past history of S3 bucket leaks, how long this has been going on, and why it's suddenly everywhere. We'll also kind of clarify the mechanism of how a bucket becomes public, because there's a bit of confusion about that. Some people think that buckets are public by default. And then with those first two pieces of information, we'll do a little bit of softballing about why this keeps happening. And then finally, we'll go into actually arming you with hopefully some auditing tools. So maybe you can go to work tomorrow, take an S3 key, take an AWS key, look at your infrastructure, and go, God damn it, Bill. And do it before you end up on the cover of something. This next slide takes a little while to buffer. That's, I promise, my only really bad joke. Okay, one of two really bad jokes. So let's start with some history. Amazon Web Services Simple Storage Service has been around for quite a while. It's one of their first services alongside Elastic Compute. I don't have an exact starting date, and frankly, I don't care. It's been around a really long time, probably longer than you've been using AWS. And the last few months have definitely seen a climb in AWS breakdowns. In fact, while I was writing this talk, it seemed like I couldn't go a full week, without there being another AWS leak. And because of that increasing attention, and because AWS is getting used more and more, these buckets are becoming a more attractive target, both for independent security researchers and for hackers, both of which should end up in you being in the news, because hopefully you're disclosing to people when you get your bucket torn up, but maybe you don't even know. So we need to talk about both of those items. So in 2013, we started seeing kind of the first inklings that this was going to be a problem. H.D. Moore and Will Vandevertner, Robin Wood, both do some of the first large-scale brute forcing of AWS buckets. Now, when I say brute forcing, I don't mean passwords, because AWS S3 buckets don't have passwords in the conventional sense. What they were brute forcing were the names. They're trying to guess the names of S3 buckets, because if they find a public one, they can pull everything down. So literally, they just started going with big, giant word lists and reaching out to AWS and saying, hey, do you have this bucket? Do you have this bucket? Do you have this bucket? Oh, you have that one. Can I see everything in it? Yes? Oh, thank you. And that was literally the first approach. And what they do, they found, they found thousands of S3 buckets. Go to this URL. My slides are already published. The link is at the end of the talk. But thousands of buckets. In 2013 already, AWS wasn't that popular yet, but thousands of buckets, and that's from word list guessing. That's not precision. That's not we found all of them. AWS, I think, thank God, doesn't actually allow you to just look at all of the buckets that are public, because that would be a disaster. The number's probably much higher, and people just use obscure naming constructs that we're not familiar with. So things kind of go quiet if you look at news, if you look at history. There's not a lot going on with AWS. And then, you know, in 2016, our favorite nexus of problems starts to hint that he's going to be in the news a lot for all kinds of bad computer stuff. And also a couple other companies, and Chris Vickery, who is going to have a lot of connections and do a lot of this stuff, starts poking around and finds a company that makes EMR equipment with a massive database of medical data in an unprotected S3 bucket, which is super not good. So we have our first set of kind of big, high-profile S3 leaks, and it's not, you know, it's not a good time. But we do see some good things. Like Sentry publishes a full-scale report on this. They say, okay, here are the mistakes that we made. We had really easily guessable bucket names. That was a mistake. We're not going to do that again. We're going to have highly randomized suffixes on the end of our bucket names. We're going to have GUID buckets. It's going to be really good. And also, we're going to manage our ACLs, right? And this should have been like the very obvious moment of, here's the tone. We've had a really big leak. Here's a small tech-savvy company showing us all what the right approach was. And we all know that since then we have had no problems with S3. This has really been for me. It's just like, again. So mostly Chris Vickery and Cromtech going around. If you look in these news articles, you know, just Control F Cromtech. Oh, good, it's another Cromtech one. Finding buckets through the same mechanism of we're just going out there and guessing names and looking for buckets, and oh, this one's open. Oh, what is it? Oh, it's a bunch of PII. This was happening so often that I had to restructure the middle of the slide deck because I used to name all of them, and it was just going to take too much time. But if you like, oh, sorry, that's backwards. If you like, there's a Git repository, and you can submit pull requests to add your new favorite S3 leak, because we're just we have so many S3 leaks now that we need source control to manage them. This is getting out of hand. And the thing that really bothers me is that it's getting so bad that people don't actually understand how they work. And like this is starting to happen where you start to see people think, well, if this is happening everywhere, then S3 buckets have to be public by default, and people are just forgetting. Unfortunately not. Like this would make me happy if this was the case, because then it's a matter of, you know, we just need to fix that. There's an easy technical fix. But no, this is a knob that you have to turn on, and people are turning it on. And you know, lots of them. I mean, we had thousands a few years ago, and now we're seeing how many. S3 has sane defaults. I don't know if this is big enough to be readable from the back, but this is from the AWS blog in 2013, and it basically says S3 is default deny, and we have multiple permissions mechanisms, and we practice the least permissions union of all of them. Least permissions union from like set theory union, right? We take all of our permissions mechanisms and we join them together, and whichever one gives you the least access, that's the one we give you. Like this is not a bad ACL system that they have. It's actually kind of all right. It seems like people are doing something. So let's look at the mechanisms for for how we actually manage these S3 buckets. There are 4 ways, essentially, to provide access to S3. You have ACLs, you have bucket policies, you have IAM policies, but these really don't matter for making a bucket fully public. You can make a bucket accessible to a user. You can make it accessible to another vendor who might then make it public for you because they're mean or stupid. And then you can make a bucket into a website, which is a little bit less risky because you can't just list a website the same way you can list something if you give it a bucket policy or an ACL. We're really going to focus on the ACLs and the bucket policies because those are the ways that you can really expose a bucket. ACLs are the old permissions mechanism. There's essentially 4 permissions. You have read and write on an object or a bucket, and you have read and write on an object or bucket ACL. That's it. You can apply those permissions to a user or to an account or to everyone. There's not much going on there. If you try and apply it to a bucket in the console, you get a warning. Don't do this. It's bad. And if you try to apply it to an object, don't do this. It's bad. And if you try and do it to a whole bunch of things, don't do this. It's bad. Like, they tell you. And you might say, oh, this is just in the console. What if you're using the CLI? If you're using the CLI, you have to do --ACL public read. Like, you have to type it in and hit enter, make it public. So people are turning this knob. And so this is the least privileged union. So you have another mechanism that you can use, right, too, which is the S3 bucket policies. They're written in JSON. They're super powerful. You can do really great stuff. Like, you can do this. This is an S3 bucket policy that allows any user to access example bucket, anything inside of it, as long as they have an IP in this /24. But not that one dude at .188. I don't know what this is used for, except for keeping Steve from reading like the terrible things you write about him. But you can do this, right? It's a powerful system. You can go in here and you can require 2FA to access a bucket. That's magic. There's tons of cool stuff you can do. It's a fine-grained system with lots of. This is the one that I see everywhere, though. This allows all of the list and all of the get objects to everyone in the bucket. I put this on a bucket, and it's important for later to remember that I put this on ShellCon bucket. You'll see why. So IAM and static website hosting and IAM, not really as big of a concern. The first 2 ways, bucket policies and ACLs, that's how buckets end up public. Why is this happening? Because writing these guys is hard. It's long and it's time consuming. You can see they're a mess. I'm going to show you a worse one later. Nobody cares. Then they do care. The cloud is supposed to be easy, right? If it's not easy, your boss gets mad at you because it's supposed to be easy. DevOps is supposed to make things fast and easy, right? And if it's not fast, your boss yells at you because why isn't it done yet? So you get it done. He's not going to look at the AWS policies. Living in a world without S3 buckets that are public isn't free. We need to actually take time to do it and be allowed to do so. How do we find out when we fail? This is way easier for the blue team than the red team for once because we don't have to brute force our own buckets. Now, I can't help you if someone else in your organization is using their personal credit card, which you can't even check statements on, to put your resources on S3 buckets that you have no introspection into. I'm sorry. Stress out your employees less. But if you do, there are some tools. You have Scout 2 and you have Security Monkey. Scout 2 is from NCC Group. Security Monkey is from Netflix. I use Scout 2 a lot. I use Security Monkey slightly less so. Security Monkey is really heavy and hard to set up. It is way powerful, and it also hits Google Cloud Platform and GitHub for auditing. So it can cover a whole bunch of stuff for you. Scout 2 is great. You can do pip install Scout 2 and run it, and it gives you an audit report, and you can have an audit in 10 minutes, and you can find that bucket policy. This is Scout 2. It's great. See? S3 actions authorized to all principals. Oh, no, this is terrible. Do something about it. Oh, look, here are all the things you need to fix. It just tells you. It's magical. By the way, if you want to see a really good bucket IAM policy, look, you can enumerate every single option. NCC Group does this because they care about security. The Security Monkey people do, too. Security Monkey does the same thing. It gives you all of your audit findings. Just install them. Just play around. They work well. Security Monkey also lets you accept the risk. You can provide a justification, and it will never put it on your reports again. I love tools that let you accept the risk. Also, it runs in Docker, and that makes everything better. Docker, Docker, Docker. I'm required by law to say that once per talk. Chromtech S3 Inspector. I wish I could say this tool was good. This tool is not good. This tool manages to provide both false positives and false negatives. So both of these buckets are public. Sorry, I take that back. This bucket is public. This bucket is not public. That's what I meant. This bucket has a bucket policy that blocks access despite having a public readable list, and this one has a bucket policy that allows access to everyone but no ACL. And you can see that when I run here with -- no sign request, it just happily lets me pull stuff down. And it also, in their documentation, they ask you to give their system access to all of the S3 get and list functions, even though it doesn't need them. They could have just stolen NCC group's list, and it would have worked better. So until they get this thing together, I would just use Scout 2. It's 10 minutes, and it'll hit all of your other AWS stuff too. So that's it. That's my brief talk. Don't expose S3 buckets. Please go download Scout 2 and audit your infrastructure if you don't already have a robust AWS infrastructure audit in place. And also, for those credit cards that your company does have the ability to check, look at your statements and see if this is billing codes on them. And also, try and not put impossible deadlines on people so that they put AWS bills on their personal credit cards so that you can't see them. That's it. That's it for me.
All right, Jason, thank you very much. Don't forget, everyone, speaker survey cards in the back. Please fill them out and let us know what you think about this talk and all the others today. And one more round of applause for Jason.